Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Weller and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Today's topic is a Dungeon Master Guide for the Dragon of Icespire Peak. That's right, the new Dungeons & Dragons adventure for the Dungeons & Dragons Essentials Kit, the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Now, I want to make it clear, if you are a player playing this adventure, this is not the right video for you. This is for the Dungeon Master. You can come back and watch this video when you've played through the adventure and you're all finished. But till then, I'm sure you'll find many videos that are more suitable for players for today. The topic for today is adventure hooks for the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Very important, getting the players hooked into your adventure. And as there really isn't an awful lot of guidance in the adventure book itself, there are two insinuated adventure hooks, but not really direct sort of guidance. It is assumed the Dungeon Master will figure out what those two hooks are, or that they will look at the list of adventures and find one that seems to appeal to their players and build that in as a hook to start them off. The only problem is I've been reading through the adventure and it's not a strong adventure. I'm not saying that it's a bad adventure, but it has, like many adventures do, some weak points, and one of them is not necessarily being interconnected in a way that's easy to make it interesting for your players. I found less ways of tying things in than I could find with the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So my first suggestion for you is to utilize the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So Gundren Rockseeker and his brothers are close friends of the player's characters. They request protection for their mining operation that is now underway and taking place at Wave Echo Cave. Now, I'm not saying this is not the same adventure hook in the Lost Mine of Phandelver. They are not going to be looking after or escorting a wagon of supplies travelling from one of the cities to Phandalin. No, they are actually specifically hired to look after the mining operations at Wave Echo Cave. They can also do some moonlighting, so that means a little bit of bounty hunting if you like, or deal with the bounty board in Phandalin. That's all cool, but their job is specifically to look after the mining operation. Now, I think that is actually very sensible. You can help tie that in using Lost Mine of Phandelver and the Dragon of Icespire Peak, particularly if you're going to combine the two. That would be my suggestion to you. Now, the reason or the rationale that the Gundren is going to give is very simple. There are a lot of threats showing interest in the mine and in Phandalin. And so, although there were lots of threats before, there's probably even more threats than there were before. And in other words, there's a lot more interest in a location that seems to be growing quite fast. And I would say that Phandalin is now at a point where it is in fact growing quite quickly. So that would be a way to hook them in for that. Make sure they are, as I've said in the past, close friends to Gundren Rockseeker if you're going to use this adventure hook. The other one that is kind of insinuated or suggested in the adventure, the Dragon of Icespire Peak, and that is that there needs to be a garrison at Phandalin. And I would suggest that the Lord's Alliance want to establish an armoured garrison at Phandalin to protect the locals from the growing threats and dangers to the town from orcs and other evil creatures or entities. This is probably the one that is going to be the strongest for anybody who is not using the Lost Mine of Phandelver. I think that is probably a really good way to pull them in. That would be my suggestion to you. Now, I know the map that I'm presenting you is not the map that's in the adventure book for Dragon of Icespire Peak, but I don't have access to the map, so I couldn't put it up. But it's pretty close to what you already have in the book. The one in Dragon of Icespire Peak is just a bit more stripped down. Now, who do they go and report to? I think the simplest way to deal with this is to have the players' characters reporting to the Town Master, Harbin Wester, for their assignments or quests or missions, and he will be the bankroll. In other words, somebody pays Harbin Wester to pay them, and I would imagine it'll be the Lord's Alliance paying Harbin Wester to establish and make sure that the place is protected. Another way you could look at it is you could have Harbin Wester collecting taxes to pay for your services to the townsfolk. So in other words, anybody in town would be paying taxes to Harbour Wester or a collection fee, and that would contribute to the player's character's salary or wages or payroll in some way. Another character you can utilise that was already well established in Phandalin, provided he's still alive, and that is you could have supervising the player's characters from the Lord's Alliance a veteran called Sildar Hallwinter. I've already done a video on Harbour Wester and Sildar Hallwinter, although they are from different perspectives rather than from this adventure. I think you'll find there's enough information on those characters in those videos to help flesh it out. I think that Sildar Hallwinter makes a sensible and rational supervisor for the player's characters. Now, they do not need to necessarily have Sildar Hallwinter be their supervisor. They might simply have one of the members assigned as a constable or sheriff, and the rest of them are sort of like a deputy or have a lower station. So this gives your players the opportunity to discuss amongst themselves who they might like to actually lead the party if they want to have a leader, or have one of the players present their character and try to apply for the position of sheriff, rather than just being a garrison member or a deputy in some way. So that would be the second adventure hook that I would suggest to you and how you can build it into your adventure. Okay, number 3 is also very much spelled out in a roundabout way, and that is the dragon. There are rumours of a white dragon having been sighted in the location and attacking locals near the Sword Mountains. This needs to be investigated. Now, I would stress that when you talk to your players and you're discussing it with their characters, that you stress that their job is not to fight the dragon, certainly not at level 1 or 2, or probably even level 3. Their job is to investigate and collect information. They are not to engage the beast if it does exist, because right now they don't know if it actually exists. Remember, rumours aren't fact. So their job first is to establish, is there really a white dragon in the area, and does it pose a threat to the locals? Then they're going to report that back to whatever faction they are part of. Maybe it's the Lord's Alliance, it might be another faction such as the Order of the Gauntlet, or the Harpers, or some other faction. It might even be a nobleman or a noble person in one of the towns, or maybe they're simply going to be reporting back to Harbour Wester if you wanted to just use the town master as a point of contact for the adventure. I think that is probably one of the stronger elements to this adventure, is just there is a dragon to investigate and deal with, but not necessarily fight at this stage. That might come later, but don't present it straight away. Otherwise, you might wind up with a total party kill or a few dead characters a little bit quicker and sooner than you really wanted. Not that we're looking for that anyway. Number 4, in terms of an adventure hook you might be able to use, and that is orcs have come down from the mountains again, and they do this from time to time over the years, or every so 100 years or 50 years or whatever you want to establish in terms of the history of Phandalin. I think it's been quite a while since orcs came down in large numbers. Certainly there was a small collection of orcs that came down during the events of the Lost Mine of Phandelver, but not necessarily a large force. And they are raiding around Phandalin, and so their job is to deal with the orcs. Now, who is presenting this to them? Who is going to pull them into this particular hook? There are 2 individuals that I think are probably most suitable. You can use Harbour Wester if you like, but we've kind of done that already with the Lost Mine of Phandelver, so let's not do that again. I would suggest that Sildar Hallwinter is trying to establish order and a safe location in Phandalin, and decides to approach one of his close friends, which will be one of the player's characters, or a number of the player's characters, or all of the player's characters, which would be much smarter. Sildar Hallwinter has approached them and asked for their help. That doesn't mean they won't get paid, but this is also kind of like a favour. So the motivation is not just money. And you'll notice with some of the adventure hooks that I present to you that I'm not always talking about they are being hired to do the job. In some cases, it might be because their faction has given them instructions to go and do it. In some cases, it might be friendship. In some cases, it might simply be because they have somebody in Phandalin who is a close relative who needs assistance in that location, and they're going to support them while the place is established and made safe. Another character, if you want to go a bit darker and a bit more sinister, is Halia Thornton. This is the businesswoman at the Phandalin Miners Exchange, and I would present this much more in a you're being paid for services. So they're going to get paid 15 gold each to establish and secure her business interests under the guise of exchange security guards. They're not necessarily exchange security guards, and I would make it clear through Halia that she may want them to do other things, and she might not reveal that her intention is to take control of Phandalin, but that there might be some covert operations required. So this is more useful for a party or group of players who like to go a bit more on the dark side, a bit closer to a more evil alignment, or a more chaotic neutral, or chaotic silly, which tends to be the case. Most people, when they pick up chaotic neutral, is just an excuse to play an evil character or just play chaotic silly. And so you can use Halia Thornton to present that particular adventure hook if you wanted to. So that's number 4. The last one is by far the weakest and the one that I dislike the most, but I'm still going to talk about it, and that is the party is a team of bounty hunters. They are travelling around the Sword Coast, and they've heard that there is money to be made in Phandalin, and they look to make money off the misfortune of the Phandalin locals by going to this public bounty board that Harbin Wester keeps, or Sildar Hallwinter keeps, or whoever you want to assign. I think Harbin Wester is probably the most sensible individual, and they just they do it for money and nothing else. By far the absolute worst adventure hook you could possibly use. Now, all of these adventure hooks, you might notice, are loosely very similar, but just approached from a different angle. And that's, I think, the most I can pull out of it. There really isn't a very strong thread in the Dragon of Icespire peak. I did not see anything that indicated to me a way of making it stronger. And I spent a good week going through all of the material. Now, if you found this video helpful, informative, and useful, excellent, fantastic. I actually have hundreds of videos for players and dungeon masters, but specifically if you're dealing with Phandalin, I have a Dungeon Master Guide, a series of videos on the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which you may find very useful if you want to tie a lot of that information into the Dragon of Icespire Peak. If you want to support the channel so I keep doing videos like this, then you can support me on Patreon. I also have affiliate links to the book depository and Amazon down in the description or doobly-doo. I also have a merchandise shelf underneath the videos. Make sure to share, like, subscribe, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live and when I publish new videos. Very important. Make sure to turn on notifications. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.